Three in a row for the Big Ten? Well, Indiana would like to think so. And of course, the odds makers have said that they are a heavy favorite against Miami. Welcome into the Big Ten Live Show here on a Tuesday once again with Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. So if you want to keep track of one of the Big Ten's top brands, check out what Corey's got available there with the 11 transfer portal editions that we just addressed and discussed over on the Iowa show. And Corey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. As you were opening, I was just curious, since we had talked a lot about Iowa this past hour. I scrolling through all the different Big Ten schools and just sheer numbers, how many of these different schools have already landed commitments from. And it's amazing. Like, I know that some of these schools, like Michigan State, going through a coaching change, and, Michigan's going through a coaching change. But like, most schools have more commitments in the portal already than Iowa does. Like 11 seems like a lot because we're talking about Iowa, but almost every one of these other schools has more commitments in the portal than Iowa. Almost every one. I think there was only one that I've seen thus far that has less. And I believe, let's see here, Northwestern has 12, so they're very close. They've got 12 portal commitments. Ohio State has 11, so they're right where Iowa is as far as numbers. Obviously, they're getting guys from Florida State and Bama and Wisconsin. And then, let's see, who else was there? USC only has 7, so that's one of 2 less than Iowa. UCLA, you want to guess how many UCLA has, Mark?
How many portal losses?
No, portal commitments thus far. With a new staff.
6.
New staff? UCLA?
With the new staff. Yeah, a ton. Sure.
37.
Okay. 37.
And then Washington's only got 9, so there's another one that has less than Iowa. Wisconsin has 27. Same staff. That's a really high number. Same staff. But I think it was, it wasn't Illinois. It wasn't Indiana. Was it the Terps? The Terps only have 7 commitments. They've lost 15 and have only landed 7. So that seems low. But they got a kid from Texas, got a kid from BC, got a couple of kids from Old Dominion. They got a USC running back.
USC running back. What's his name?
Harry Dalton III.
Okay.
And then they also, this is Maryland for you, right? Like they got some dudes at receiver in the portal. Like they landed, just skill positions in general, right? Harry Dalton III from USC. They got Chris Durr from Wyoming. They got Naeem Abdul-Rahim Gladding from Old Dominion at receiver. Traquan Jones from Old Dominion. Obviously, that was a really good program this year at that level. In the conversation for one of those bids from G5. So anyways, but yeah, they got some work to do. But this is so weird that we have the portal overlap the college football playoff and the national championship. Because this is a Big Ten show, I feel obligated to at least discuss the portal at large in this league. And I think the biggest storyline here in the last couple of days from the conference comes out of Eugene. Coy Parrish commits to the Ducks. Dylan Raiola commits to the Ducks. Still don't have an official announcement, I don't believe, from Dylan Raiola. We haven't talked about Rocco Becht. He is a Nittany Lion, along with basically every other good player that played at Iowa State last year. Gabe Burkle, Bramer, the tight end. I think they got at least a receiver or 2 from the fray. I mean, Matt Campbell has totally decimated that Iowa State roster. This is not a Big 12 show, so I'm not going to sit here and express concern about Jimmy Rogers, but boy, they've had to – that's just a totally different – I feel sorry for some Iowa State fans that I know, because it's like, man, you not only – we haven't dealt with this at Iowa, and Iowa State's not the first, but boy, they're about as extreme as you can get. To lose your entire staff, plus you lose your entire roster, what about it is the same except the colors? The colors of the school, the stadium. Like, it is really amazing. And I have no idea what he's going to end up doing there, but the league is really I think it's gotten better. I mean, I think it's gotten better overall. And I said this a few weeks ago. We were talking bowl games. I think the league has the best coaches in the country. And, it starts with Jason Day. I always go back to Jason Day. I don't even watch golf anymore, but it goes back to Ryan Day and Kirk Ferentz. Then you got Whittingham's in this league now. I mean, Matt Campbell's in the league. You still got Leonard. You still got Lanning. You got Loxley. You got Michael Loxley.
That you do have Michael Loxley. Yes, you still have Michael Loxley. Maybe that weighs the grade down a bit, but that might be another interesting. I think of all these off season, for as much as I love watching football, and that's why we do this, is to watch football. But to run through some of these off season topics, and one would be comparing the coaches collectively in every conference. I'm sure that would stir some people up if I actually ranked the conferences based on the coaches in the conference.
And the one guy I didn't mention is probably the hottest commodity in the sport right now, in Curt Cignetti. So, what if you had to rank the 5 weakest coaches right now collectively in this league from just recent success along with projecting forward? I think you'd have to go with Loxley. He's the worst. And then maybe Fickell has to be in your top 5.
Yes.
And then the Purdue coach would,
which is difficult to rank him
hard
just because he's only had one season, but you have to put him there. He went 2-10.
After that, where do you go?
Well, we've got how many new coaches? We've got Pat Fitzgerald, we've got Matt Campbell, we've got Kyle Whittingham. So
but Whittingham
can't be ranked.
Fitzgerald was really bad the last couple of years at Northwestern, which is strange. But I love that hire from MSU. I'm not going to put him in my top 5 because of the success he did have at Northwestern. Whittingham was phenomenal at Utah.
Then where do we go?
That's what I'm saying. I think Fleck. You have to put Fleck in there, and then Rule. Fleck and Rule in your bottom 5, and who would round out the
David
bottom?
Braun?
I just no. He was brought in Chip Kelly. Why would I put David Braun? They just made a bowl game in year 2, taking over a Northwestern program that was led by a guy.
Year 3, they make a bowl game.
Okay, year
DJ
3,
Fleck's making bowl games every year, and he had a better record than Braun.
Northwestern. I'm just saying.
What has happened over the last 25 years to let us think that Northwestern is a worse job than Minnesota? You can win just as much at Northwestern as you can at Minnesota.
Am I going crazy, or did the academic standards?
Well, the academic standards are there, but I'm just saying coaches over we're working on 30 years now that Northwestern has been good at football most of the time. They've been decent.
By the way, had we said this a few months ago, we would have said Foster.
Yes.
Would have been at the top of the list.
Loxley always would have been there.
By the way, I know who we'd put in the other 5. I know it'd have to be Schiano. And I got a lot of respect for Schiano, but I think he'd have to be in the 5 because the league is so deep. And I like Schiano, but I think he'd have to be in the 5.
What you are pointing out is that the league is loaded with good coaches. If we can go to PJ Fleck, Matt Rule, Greg Schiano, and that was clarified at one point in the season. I was watching a Rutgers football game that it needs to be pronounced Schiano. That rhymes with piano.
Really?
Not Schiano. I've always said Schiano as well.
I've always said Schiano, yeah.
I'll have to
everybody I've ever listened to has always said Schiano. And the guy, the JMU guy who remind me of his name, Wesley.
Bob Chesney.
Wesley. Yeah, Chesney. I mean, he may be a total flop. We don't know. I mean, just because Cignetti was able to make the JMU to Big Ten jump does not mean Chesney will. But I'm not going to include a new guy in the league that performed really well at their respective school to get here in my bottom 5 to start things out. I'm just saying, are we missing anybody else? Is there anybody else in this league that would even be in the conversation for one of those bottom 5 spots? I don't think.
No, we've hit it.
That's what's crazy. I mean, you literally got rid of a total fraud in Sharon Moore. Total fraud. They got rid of a very mediocre. I mean, he didn't get a lot of time, but Jonathan Smith, in his time there, showed no real signs of life. Like I said, Fickell could have easily been gone too. So that's why Fickell and Loxley, hands down, have to be in the bottom 5. And then it's after that, you're like, okay, yeah, probably the Purdue guy, but he's still young. He's still It's early there. And like I said, you like Shiano, but he's been, just okay and, very
And
unbalanced.
maybe we keep my guy Fleck out of the bottom 5 just because he's dominated Rule.
And
We'll give him the
put
tiebreaker
in
there.
you put in Rule instead. Yeah, I mean, also who's starting at quarterback for? Is it the UNLV guy? I mean, we haven't talked about Nebraska, but is it the UNLV transfer that's going to be the starter at Nebraska?
Apparently.
Okay.
I don't know. You every time you spit out another sentence, I think about great content that we could work on here in the next couple of weeks. I would love to go through the Big Ten. I would love to go through the entirety of college football and look at every team and say, this is who they lost, this is who they gained, this is the net result, good or bad, A, B, C, or D, and then the coaches' rankings. Yes.
I will say Nebraska's done very well getting a couple of Iowa State guys. Brendan Black, offensive lineman, Iowa State guys in general. Will Hawthorne, linebacker, both those guys committed to Nebraska, and then Anthony Calandria, the UNLV transfer. He's undersized, 6'2", 205, but he is a playmaker. But they've also lost guys. And they lose Emmett Johnson, right? He's done. That's the biggest loss, I would have to think. That's bigger than Dylan Raiola, in my opinion.
Calandria started as a freshman at Virginia. He's been a really good player for a long time. When he was walking on the field with Virginia every week, overmatched in terms of talent around him, he would make plays. And he's a good player.
They have done well. I don't know. I know they lost several guys in the portal on their offensive line, and then they lost some guys to graduation. But Nebraska, I will say, just make one more comment about their portal haul thus far. They got a kid from South Carolina whose last name I can't pronounce, but physically looks the part.
I know who it is.
Babalade. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
Babalade. 6'5", 330. And then, like I mentioned, Brendan Black from Iowa State, Paul Mabenga from LSU. So, those are three really important. I mean, I've not dissected their tape, but those are really consequential additions for Nebraska's offense because they need help. There's too many teams. We go on here for, however long. I'm here for the first half hour, and then, maybe you do it. There's too many teams on a week in, week out basis to really cover the whole league. That's why we kind of jump all over the place. And I know it's all about Indiana right now, but if we're not going to talk about the portal now, when are we going to talk about the portal? This is when it's most active right now, as dumb as that is. And it is dumb. But there's some, as always, there's some really interesting portal storylines in this league right now.
I did not realize until a few hours ago that Ohio State, because rival fan bases, not just Michigan, but others, were bashing them for the program's falling apart. 23 players are in the portal, that they had that many in the portal. I could review it and see how many of those really matter. I can think of one or two.
Who is this? Who are we talking about?
Ohio State.
Oh, well, I mean, if you're not playing at Ohio State and you're at Ohio State, you're probably going to be able to collect some money to go somewhere else, kind of like Caleb Brown did at Iowa and he never played. Right? I mean, I don't know what he got to go to Iowa, but isn't that fair, Mark? Especially if you're a receiver. If I'm a receiver and I'm buried at Ohio State, I'm getting in the portal faster than you can say the word portal, because I know somebody's going to look at me and say, hey, he's at Ohio State. And by the way, if you're at Ohio State as a receiver, you're probably a highly touted kid out of high school. Just because you're not playing doesn't mean you're not really good. Doesn't mean you are good, but doesn't mean you're not really good. And schools are probably going to spend some money in this day and age. So it would take a lot for me to start worrying about Ohio State in the portal. So I just looked up on On3. According to On3, this is what they say they do with their portal rankings. Their data for that. So On3's team transfer portal index utilizes On3's performance score to measure a team's production during the transfer portal process, compared relative against its roster and not a comparison against other schools. This proprietary algorithm determines if a school has improved its overall team talent, stayed the same, or declined in talent during the transfer portal window. So that's kind of what we said last hour, what we'd like to see. And they've got Oregon number 1. And They lost 18 guys, brought 11 in. Obviously, On3 really likes the guys they have brought in. 6 4-stars, lost 16 3-stars. I don't know how much there you go. I've just got Big Ten selected, Mark. But I don't know how much you read into star ratings via the portal because the guys aren't playing. It's hard. I just don't know how much you can read into rankings. There you go. You'll see what I'm looking at. The text is so big. Here we go. No, that's not. Are we on the wrong year? Or maybe I'm on the wrong year.
I had 2026.
Yeah, you got it. You're on the right year. I was on the wrong year. Indiana's got the number one. Thank you for correcting that. For some reason, it defaulted to 2025 for me. So this surprises me, right? Like, these are not the schools you'd think collectively would have the highest returns. I mean, Indiana's spending some money. It sounds like Mark Cuban has invested some more dollars into that program. So, but then, I mean, for UCLA to be, where they are right now,
Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, but those two schools have really loaded up on what On3 considers lower level portal ads. Like, they just got a lot more guys. Illinois got more guys going out. That's interesting. Illinois is considered the third best team in the league as far as performing in the portal this cycle, and yet they've lost 28 3-stars and brought in 12 3-stars, no 4 or 5-stars. That's interesting that they would be ranked that high. Whereas with UCLA, they really haven't. They've lost 1 4-star, got two 4-stars in, lost 15 3-stars, brought in 34 3-stars. I just find this interesting how they're ranking these teams. And we just talked about, we were really impressed with Iowa's haul. But if you look at how On3 breaks it down, none of the guys we talked about are 4-star or better. They lost 7 3-star kids and 11. They are bringing in 11 3-star kids.
And just to clarify, I believe this is correct because it's correct when applying this to, let's say, the adjusted total team talent rankings that 247 does. But they are adjusting the high school star rating to that player's productivity in college. Like, if somebody's a low 3-star, but they are an all-conference player in college, let's say in the G5, they're going to level them up to a 4-star, let's say.
So the fallacy with that way of calculating this is it really doesn't take into account their level of development whatsoever, because they may have had really good development at said school, but just not reach the field because they got better talent in front of them.
Well, no, I'm saying that it does.
How can it take that into account?
I'm saying that if they played and performed,
right, but
they're raising their recruiting ranking.
I understand, but what I'm saying is if they had a recruiting ranking that was maybe even a 2 or 3-star rating at a high school, but they developed really well in a couple of years at Notre Dame and then entered the portal without ever seeing the field, the data is going to act like, well, they're the same prospect they were at a high school, where in reality they might be a lot better.
Well, there's no way of knowing that.
That's what I'm saying. That's my point. That's my point.
The data can't measure something that doesn't exist yet.
I know, but my point is, I'm saying it because you have portal rankings that in some ways can be more accurate and more of a scientific exact than high school ratings, but in some ways are less exact because at least high school, you're able to see all these guys are playing on Friday nights across the country. Unless they're hurt, they're all playing. Whereas some of these guys have been riding the bench for 2 years. We don't have any tape since high school.
Point well taken about those particular players versus all the high school players that are obviously stars or really good players at their own high school teams. But at least here, we have a pretty large portion of players that have proven something at this level.
Yeah, well, except Iowa. All the guys Iowa's bringing in have proven
the third, fourth level. Something.
Yeah, they've proven it at the college level. But here's the deal. Like, no, I don't expect anybody across the so there's a reason why Iowa's middle of the pack right now in their transfer portal rankings. Iowa fans are really excited about the portal class, but nobody should expect the country to look at Iowa and say, wow, they cleaned up. I mean, you're just not going to do that with guys from Rio Grande and Furman and Holy Cross. There's one more that I'm trying to think of. Wasn't there another school that was just off the rails that they got a kid from?
Well,
Furman, Holy
the one wide
Cross.
receiver had like 5 letters in the name of the school, and it ended in GV, Grand Valley.
Yeah, Rio Grande. I said that though.
Oh, okay.
Rio Grande Valley. I said Rio Grande. Well, Robert Morris is another example. They got a safety from Robert Morris. I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying that
Sure.
nobody's going to take that seriously until they perform in this league.
You know what I learned from our exercise on the previous show? So, folks, Iowa football live with Corey and myself every Tuesday at 5 Eastern over on the Hawkeyes channel here at the Voice of College Football. But that Pro Football Focus does grades on the likes of Robert Morris and these other schools. I was not aware.
Yeah, but are they rated the same on the same curve as high major schools? I don't think they are. Don't they have like FCS? Like they're rating
I
them
would
against
think
other
so.
FCS
Yeah.
schools. I think. I still don't know how that's possible. How can Pro Football Focus have enough analysts to break down every play for every player across Division One college football? It just it would take. We're talking thousands
Yes.
and thousands of
Yes.
people.
There are people watching a guard at Northwestern every play of the season
No,
to
no,
see whether he executed.
a guard at Northwestern State.
Yes, there
Every
you
play
go.
of the
Yes.
season. Oh, yeah.
Every time that the recruiting rankings are brought up, someone will go with the outliers. Now, of course, this outlier, that was almost 30 years ago. So, yes, Kurt Warner bagged groceries. He was not recruited heavily, went to Northern Iowa. Yeah, we know the whole deal, but yes,
Have you ever bagged
absolutely.
groceries, Mark?
Oh, absolutely. It's Sparkle Market.
That
I
was your
worked there for
job?
6 years.
You worked as a Sparkle Market bagger for 6 years?
Well, I did not bagging groceries was kind of the low rung responsibility when they
Well,
really needed help up front. I was my pride and joy was bringing in the pallets of stock off the truck and stocking shelves.
you missed that?
I took a ton of pride in that. Yeah, I would think about running down the street to apply at Walmart to do it if I could do it for like 3 hours a night or something.
Why don't you
Not
do that?
every night, like once a week for 3 hours just to get it out of me. Just
Kroger? You got Kroger
Kroger,
down there,
whoever,
right? And what's the big,
Publix.
Publix? Yeah.
Yeah, I was in a Publix yesterday, actually, and, I was marveling at whoever faced the shelves. I used to so there was a particular boss that told me one time, "Mark, we know that you stocked this aisle because we could run a tape measure right down the aisle and it wouldn't bend." That's right. Exactly. That's the way it should be done. It should be like
Uh,
perfection.
you'd go nut. You would have a fit in a Burlington Coat Factory. Because whenever I go into Burlington Coat Factory, which is not often, you go in there and there's just clothes all over the ground. I've never understood. We're supposed to be this really nice, like suit and coat place, and there's just clothes all over the floor. Now maybe that's changed, but that was always what I thought of when I thought of Burlington Coat Factory.
So it has been a long time since I was in one of those. Is that because they advertise it as you don't need to uh, re-rack your
I
coat that you tried on? You can just dump it?
I don't no, I don't think that's what it is. I mean, I've probably tried on some clothes at Burlington Coat Factory before, but I've definitely put them to be re-racked. I'm not gonna first of all, that's weird to not have people trying on clothes that someone else just tried on. Why would you just throw them on? I'm talking on the floor in the aisles. I mean, just I've been
Well,
into maybe they've changed.
don't we all try on clothes that other people have tried on? Like if I
Yeah,
take a
but
shirt
I guess there's a mental aspect to having them rehung by a
absolutely there is. Yeah.
as opposed to just some yahoo slipping them back on a hanger and maybe putting them back where they're supposed to be or maybe not. But you're right. We all yeah, I'm sure there's some Goodwill shoppers in our chat. So, if you're trying on clothes at Goodwill, you don't know where those clothes have been. Although I think Goodwill is required to wash their clothes before they put them on the rack. I would think they'd have to, right?
Yes, I would think so.
Because if you don't wash the clothes at Goodwill, what would happen? you'd have anything and everything go wrong, right? You'd have infestations of fleas and lice and and bed bugs and all kinds of stuff. And
Corey,
it
you have
just
taken this to degrees in which I have never considered.
uh
I will ask you this though, as I sit here and contemplate the off season, which I shouldn't do yet, because I am going to cut some videos on this Miami Indiana matchup. If you could see me produce one video concerning off season topics, what would you choose?
that's a good question. I think with how big the portal is, and we talked about it today, I'd like to see if you could find data for who has been the most successful in portal additions.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what we think before. I want long term. I want a long look at that. I want to, they
So
bring it.
basically, you're asking me to find somebody else's work because I can't do that. Obviously, if somebody
Well,
wanted to pay me like $100,000 for me to work for like weeks on end,
all right.
I would love. I would do that. I would sit there and go through Illinois' transfer portals from 2020, 21, 20. I would love to do that.
All right. I have a better idea. I want you to rank every Power 4 coach. Okay.
I
And then
already
what I
do
want.
that.
Well, and then what I want you to do is I want you to take every school in the Big Ten,
Yeah.
average out the numbers, and figure out what the
Oh.
average national ranking is, and then compare that to the SEC directly.
Okay.
And by that ranking, determine not who the better conference is, which conference has the better head coaches, period. No, this is subjective, but it's only subjective to you. That will determine who has the better coaches.
Okay.
So that wouldn't be
I
hard
do
for you
rank
to
the
do.
coaches every off season.
Yeah. And have you ever done that? Have you ever averaged
No,
out?
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
That would be a pretty easy way to do it.
That isn't. I mean, isn't that the only way to do it? Really?
And then if it struck me wrong, then I would think, okay, well, I messed up on my rankings. If this does not,
and
appear
if
to be
anybody
accurate.
says, well, if the Big Ten ends up being on top, which I think it probably would be, if the Big Ten ends up being on top, and an SEC homer like Darrell MVP wants to say, well, the SEC has the best of the best coaches. They have, who's the best of the best coaches, and they have the guy at Georgia, or they have, I don't even think it's close. I mean, you have what's his face at Georgia that allows all the DUIs. You have DeBoer, who is at Alabama and has had success, but you have let's see, you have the little guy at South Carolina.
the little guy at South Carolina. Yes, Shane Beamer.
Beamer.
Well, I would start with yes, Kalen DeBoer. Kirby Smart is at
Kirby
the top
Smart.
of the list. He's still the guy.
You have the
Lane
Vanderbilt.
Kiffin,
You have Lane Kiffin. You have
Steve
Sarkisian. You have
Mike Elko at Texas A&M. Those to me are the best.
Sure,
off the top of my head.
Even if you were to rank those better than the top Big Ten coaches, I think the best way to do it is average out all members across the board, because then you can just say, okay, collectively, who has the better coaches? Because
spoiler alert, I would not rank those 4 or 5 coaches better than the top 4 or 5 in the Big Ten.
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't either. Like I say, I right now it appears the best coach in the country is Curt Cignetti. I mean, it appears that way. I'm not saying that it is. Right now, it appears that way, and so he's the number one. And then, then is it Ryan Day after that?
Kirby Smart.
Yeah, it could be Kirby. I don't even know who would be a close second after that, or a close third. Dan Lanning.
I do enjoy doing this, but college football is the most difficult, I believe, the most difficult sport to rank the coaches because of the disparity in resources.
Yeah, I know. That's true. That's true. Yeah.
If the Northwestern coach is going 7-5 and the Ohio State coach is going 11-1, who's doing a better job?
Maybe I should do it, because I like being subjective and not looking at the data as much, which may, that may make my rankings less valid. But some of that you just have to kind of go on what you know about the resources and history at said schools. And Indiana's a perfect example, right? They're just thrashing everybody. They have no history. He's been there less than 2 years. So I don't know how you can at any point put anybody below him, or excuse me, above him. So
So I am curious, where in the world was I a year ago? My goodness. Oh, this must have been right when I moved in here. So this might have been 2 years ago. Uh-oh. I was looking for the I gotta find the actual data and my lists from previous years, but I looked for the video to find the rankings from last year. I was curious where I had Signetti last year.
before you add in our next caller, I have to slide, but it's not because of who the next caller is. The real MVP knows I care a lot about him, even though I don't have Clark Lee in my top 5 nationally. Who's the new Kentucky head coach? I don't even know who's coaching there now.
Will Stein, the
Will Stein.
Oregon
Okay.
offensive coordinator.
Yeah. Hey, there's an example of a guy that's, no more proven than, honestly, we have no reason to think he's going to be a better coach than, the guy that just got Chesney at UCLA. We have no reason to believe that. In fact, right now, would you put Stein or Chesney first? I'd put Chesney ahead of Stein.
Yeah, because he's done the job.
Yeah. Taking a team to a playoff. And he shares the last name with a really good country singer. Right?
Yeah. Of whose music I have no clue.
You've listened to Kenny Chesney.
I'm sure I have at some point and shut it off as soon as possible.
Wait a minute. You like country music. You just don't like anything past 1960 or what?
1960.
Sorry,
I am going to, after the show, I'm going to look up Kenny Chesney's biggest hits to see what I'm aware of. I'm sure I know 3 to 5.
Yeah. Well, that's yeah.
But I'll see if I like them.
Okay.
I'll let you know, since I know that you are a big country music fan.
I am. Yeah, I didn't used to be, but I am. So anyways.
All right, Corey, when is the next time everyone can catch you?
Yeah, I'll be live tomorrow night. We'll have coverage here soon for wrestling, big news on the Iowa wrestling front, and then Iowa portal stuff, football portal stuff all week. Men's post game tomorrow, women's post game Thursday.
All right, Corey, thanks for being here.
Thanks.
We'll see you. All right, this is the Big Ten Live Show. We come your way each and every Tuesday at 6 Eastern. This is right after our Iowa show over on the Hawkeyes channel here at the Voice of College Football with Corey. Let me recognize this super chat coming in from Dallas fan in DC1. Dallas fan, appreciate you being here. The Notre Dame transfer portal rating is 83.33. I don't know what that means, but we will look at that to compare it against the rest of the nation. But I'm taking a wild guess that is a good rating, thus the super chat. Thank you for that, Dallas. Also, as we bring in our first caller, I'd like to turn everyone's attention to the odds for Monday's game. So Indiana has been bet up, meaning the point spread opened at 7.5. It's now been bet up to 8.5. And then the over-under is 47.5 right there. And then if you want to go with a money line, which means you're betting on the team to actually just win out straight. So if you put $100 on Miami to win the game, and they do, in fact, you will net $275. So just to clarify this, because I get in these conversations all the time with people, you will receive $375 back after you pay $100. Your net return is $275. And for Indiana, however, you have to pay $340 to win $100. So I believe that the wise decision to make. Now, there's only one game, so they can't play 100 times. But over the course, if they could play 100 times, I believe that the odds favor Miami, meaning that Miami is a better play against the odds. To lay down 100 to win 275, when if you lay down 100 for Indiana, you're going to win like $30. Think about that. $100 play wins you $275 for Miami, and a $100 play for Indiana wins you like $35. That's a like 9-1 ratio in Miami's favor if you are betting on Miami to win the game. All right, the real MVP showing up. What's going on tonight?
I want to ask you about Marcus Freeman. He's having a news conference tomorrow. The NFL is very much interested in him. Do you still think there's a chance he takes another job in the NFL?
I would think that Marcus Freeman would look at his situation and think that the NFL can wait, but that's just a guess. So maybe he's holding the news conference just to let everyone know that the rumors need to be squashed and he's staying at Notre Dame. That would be my guess, but that is merely a guess. That at his age and having not completely achieved everything at Notre Dame that I'm sure he would like to accomplish there, that is my lean, but that's a guess.
Yeah, the NFL has reportedly said, like, hey, we want you, even if you turned us down. He already publicly turned them down, and the NFL's like, nah, we still want him. So I think the NFL may drastically overpay for him. And I think the NFL is going to, like, offer him a gargantuan contract.
Yeah, so if I'm the NFL or if I'm any organization that has any self-respect, once I've offered a position to somebody, I'm not begging them to come, because then I would also be questioning whether they would be showing up with fully focused and fully happy and content in their decision. It's much like Deshaun Watson when he signed with the Cleveland Browns. It was insane the amount of money that he was paid, number one. Number two, it was insane to find out that he basically turned the Browns down and wanted to go to another destination, but the Browns completely overpaid and he changed his mind. Well, he changed his mind
Right.
because the zeros mounted, and I would not want to be begging and groveling for somebody to come play or coach, just knowing that there would be a less than enthusiastic person that I would be hiring at that point. So we lost the real MVP's link there. We lost the feed there. But of course, we're going to focus on the national championship game. Once again, I got to say that the play for Miami against the odds is a much better play than the play for Indiana. Now, again, if they don't win the game, then it's null and void. That I guarantee, but this is a stupid guarantee because it can't be backed up. But if they played 100 times, that Miami would be the better odds play to make than Indiana. I don't think there's any question about that. But they only play once, and it should be a heck of a ball game, despite what the odds makers are telling us. Ohio State was about the same level favorite last year against Notre Dame. I believe that point spread was 8.5 or 9.5. And Ohio State eventually covered. Did they cover the spread? No, they did not cover the spread. They were up big. Notre Dame went up 7-0. Ohio State came back. I believe that their largest lead was something like, what was the final score of that game? 34-26, 34-26, right? And so was it 34-26? 34-23. I forget now. Yeah, I think it was 34-23. They did cover the spread. That's right. Because they were up by 3 touchdowns and Notre Dame came back to make it a game, and obviously could have gotten the ball back in the third down play. It was 31-23, and then Jeremiah Smith, and then they kicked the field goal to ice it by 11. That's right. So Ohio State did cover the spread, but obviously Notre Dame made it very dicey in regards to the folks that bet on the point spread, because it came down to the last 45 seconds or so. All right. Interesting comments in the chat that are all over the place. This started out as the Big Ten Live show. We had Corey Brada here. We typically go live every Tuesday at 6 Eastern, but we're just going to expand it out to whatever you want to talk about concerning college football. because this kind of takes the place of the late night show on Tuesday since we're already here. No reason for me to come back at 10 Eastern. I'm going to leave the link in the chat. And I got to say, if we don't get too many calls, that I'm going to go off and make some content. I'm going to match up Indiana and Miami. They have one common opponent, Ohio State, of course. Then they also have the national rankings. And I will say this about national statistical rankings. I put quite a bit of weight in some of them. I put a lot less weight in others. I tend to veer toward the efficiency rankings and the advanced metrics more so than yards per game, passing yards per game, rushing yards per game. I think that is somewhat inconsequential. Although if you do look at total offense and total defense, you will see the best offenses in the country near the top and the best defenses in the country near the top. But now we're comparing the best teams in the country, and we're looking for an edge. And certainly the statistics clearly displayed outside of two games, Ole Miss and Georgia and Miami and Ohio State. The national stats and rankings clearly indicated the better team going into the game. So those are valid because we've now played 10 college football playoff games and only 2 of them steered us in the wrong direction in regards to the more dominant team during the regular season losing the game, and that would be Georgia against Ole Miss and Ohio State against Miami. But all the other games, you could clearly see Oregon should beat Texas Tech. Indiana should beat Alabama. Indiana should beat Oregon, and so forth and so on. Miami had distinct advantages over Texas A&M that played out. Miami had distinct advantages on the defensive side of the ball that played out against Ole Miss. If anything, Ole Miss really blocked well in pass pro, and they called an excellent game plan in terms of keeping their quarterback upright and moving him off platform and moving him around so he was not a sitting duck. And obviously he doesn't play like a sitting duck. And that was a heck of a ball game. That was the ball game of the playoff. And of course, Ole Miss and Georgia was a heck of a game. And really, those are the two. Those are the two that lived up to the billing. We will, of course, check on this. But Dallas, thank you so much for the news here. Breaking news. Notre Dame lands a commitment from Ohio State transfer receiver Mylan Graham. Really strange to me that Mylan Graham would choose to leave Ohio State, considering he was in line to be a factor this year after waiting around this past season. I believe only 1 year in Columbus for Mylan Graham, but he is off to Notre Dame. Yeah, again, I understand your point, but when the opponents are comparable and the opponents are comparable for everybody that's left in the playoff, once we move past the first round, certainly once we move past Tulane and James Madison being in the playoff, everybody else is playing like competition. Yeah, no doubt there. Sam, in regards to why Mylan Graham is leaving Ohio State to go to Notre Dame is because of money. But both schools are definitely going to pay out. And we shall see this point right here from Goat Since Yost. Wonder who he roots for. Anyway, that this could be the Brian Hartline fallout. We shall see. We shall see. Because Ohio State certainly picked up a couple nice commitments at the wide receiver position after Hartline decided to leave. We do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We've got the link there in the chat if you'd like to give me a call to talk a national championship game or the transfer portal or anything else on your mind. Otherwise, be looking out for a ton of content coming your way as best I can. This is no longer a full-time gig for me. Therefore, you don't see the level of content or the quality of content, unfortunately, that you used to, but we'll do our best and get you ready for the national championship game. And then as soon as the game's over, of course, we're going to be here live after the game. And then also keep in mind, once we pass the national championship game, that we are going to dissect all those off-season topics, break down the transfer portal, and coaches rankings and program rankings and team rankings and all of that business. All right. Keith stopping by to talk some college football with us. Keith, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Mark. Yeah, I've been wanting to bring up a point with the transfer portal for the last couple of weeks, but we've been having other things to talk about, mainly the games. That point being, out of the 20-some players from Michigan that entered the transfer portal, it looks like 70 to 80% of the transfers are returning. So they pop out there. It looks like they pop out there, see if they're going to get more money elsewhere, and then looks like grass is greener on this side of the fence and come right back home. Is that a trend in the portal? Have you tracked that number at all?
So I can only say this anecdotally. No, that's a rarity. I have never seen this number calculated. And I got to think that maybe with having a new head coach, that it would be more common for players to dip their toes in the portal because that's obviously not the coach that they signed to play for. But then they might be wooed back when they get some kind of confirmation or meet with the new head coach and are sold on him doing the job. But that's a rather unique situation. No, most of the players that hit the portal are gone.
Yeah. I have a feeling that as the transfer portal moves forward, maybe I'm wrong. Okay, yeah, maybe I'm wrong. I was thinking maybe that was going to be the trend everywhere because once the profit sharing kicks in, that everybody's going to see that they're getting a real market value, and so there's no incentive to move. But we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, and once again, I would think, and this is a guess, that more players come back through the transfer portal and return to their own team when there is a coaching change, because in every situation where there's a coaching change, there are more players that hit the portal. That's been proven, that's been shown. But I think that that's a knee-jerk reaction by a ton of players just to say, hey, I signed up to play for this other guy. I don't know anything about the new guy. I got to get out there and give it a look. And then they're wooed back at higher rates.
Oh, yeah. So out of Ohio State's members that entered the transfer portal, how many did they lose?
That's a great question. I know that the number was at 23. We could call up the Ohio State list here and see what they've lost through the transfer portal and see really out of those what's significant. Yeah, so looking at it here, we'll pop it on the screen right now. So for the Buckeyes, we've got I don't know anything about this Northwestern tight end. Hunter Welsing. I do know the name, so I'll have to look him up, and I know that I've seen him play. Earl Little is a really good safety who started his career at Miami, then went to Florida State, signed by the Buckeyes. So these are obviously the gains. You wanted to look at the losses.
Yeah,
And there we
I
go.
saw
We're up to 32. I told you 23. There's 32.
32 losses.
32 losses. Well, they're in
Wow.
the portal. They're not necessarily losses yet, but
Okay.
I'm trying to see who actually is.
Well, Kindholtz left, right? Kindholtz
Yes.
left.
Yeah,
We know
Keen
that.
Holtz left. Malik Hartford's a good player at safety. He's in the portal. That would be one that would be fairly significant. Javon McFadden was a highly rated player coming out of high school. Quincy Porter, huge 5-star recruit out of high school, wide receiver, goes to Notre Dame. So that's a big loss. Again, in theory, it's a big loss. He never proved anything, and he's just getting his playing career started.
Yeah, you just don't know. It's pretty hard to find the field in the Ohio State wide receiver room. So when he does find the field, we just don't.
He would have. Mylan Graham, that was noted by one of our Notre Dame guys, Dallas, who was watching. Mylan Graham was in line. This is a situation, Keith, where you got to wonder that and just think that money has to be trumping everything, because Mylan Graham has been sitting on the bench, but he's only 1 year into his career. And with all the players leaving to go to the NFL at that position, well, I shouldn't say all. Carnell Tate would be the most obvious, but he was definitely in a position to play next year, you would think, and he goes to Notre Dame. So who knows how much money he had to play with that. Tegra Shabola was a mostly starting offensive lineman at Ohio State who leaves and goes to Kentucky. So they lost a starting player there. Aaron Scott, that's a big loss. Again, from a potential standpoint, he didn't play much, but he was just a freshman. But he was a big time recruit at cornerback, and he goes into the portal. And again, it kind of leaves people scratching their heads as to this guy was in line to, emerge as a starter, and he jumps into the portal. Those are the guys that come to mind. James Peoples was in line to compete for a starting position at running back going into last season, but once Bo Jackson emerged, and then also Bryce West at running back, the writing was kind of on the wall. He was actually given opportunities. The writing was kind of on the wall that he was going to be the third string running back. So he goes to Penn State. So not necessarily a huge loss, but a depth loss there. CJ Hicks was a huge recruit back in his time. And he has taken off for South Florida. Now, he ran into better players who surpassed him on the depth chart, and he had a move from linebacker to edge that he didn't necessarily take to as a starting player, at least. Bryce West, that's a disappointing loss for Ohio State at cornerback. Again, you're looking at a player who was one of the top players at his position coming out of high school, had yet to really step on the field much at Ohio State in terms of playing significant playing time in meaningful games, and he goes to Wisconsin. There's the Lincoln Keenholtz move to Louisville. And that's Jelani Thurman, played a lot of time at tight end. Not a major factor, not a loss that's going to hurt them big, but he was a contributor at tight end, and he goes to North Carolina. And Bryson Rogers, another wide receiver that was a 4 or 5 star, goes to South Florida to play for Brian Hartline. So, yeah, they took their hits. They took their hits, Keith, more from the standpoint of huge recruits. I'm talking about top 50 players in the country
Yeah.
that had yet to do anything at Ohio State, but were expected to be in line to be the next stars.
But you're going to basically lose like over 30?
32.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, is it just Whittingham happens to be such a persona that he's recruiting these guys back? You think that may be why Michigan got so many back?
Well, I think if these guys are paying attention, they know who Kyle Whittingham is, and they know that he has a lot of respect and credibility in the sport. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, because you're right. Most player teams do get all kinds of transfers. That means a lot of teams are losing them. So yeah, so that's interesting that Michigan has just bucked the trend and really kept 70 to 80% of their portal players.
Yeah. I think that, yeah, for a coach not getting fired, for replacing a coach who did not get fired, to upgrade this significantly doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good, and I'm really looking for that game. Were you in on that podcast that was talking about 3 in a row, or did you address that yet? The significance of 3 in a row?
Well, it would be the first time in Big Ten history. And of course, it being a third team as well, and we would have not guessed Indiana. Penn State was the most likely guess at the beginning of the year, and then Oregon. But yeah, for the conference to win 3 straight and it to be 3 different teams, not like a situation where Clemson won 2 in 4 years, but the rest of the ACC was hot garbage, is a different deal. This means that the league is dominant at the top from a number of different schools.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, and I wanted to make that point about the dominant conferences is some SEC voices are saying the top doesn't matter. It's so much. It's the top to bottom that matters more. But in reality, do any of us really know what the mid to bottom of the conferences were doing over the last 15 years, or say between 22 and 2010, when the SEC was dominating so much? Does anybody know what the mid to the bottom of the conferences were doing for those 15 years? Or is it that they were dominating at the top so much that it was impressive, that how impressive the SEC was?
How long have you been watching me, Keith?
I see you waving.
Yes, I was keeping track of all this. Yes, the SEC was dominating from top to bottom. Yes, their 8th place teams were winning bowl games against the other. Usually, when their 8th place team was winning a bowl game, they were winning a bowl game against like a 4th or 5th place team from another conference because of the way the SEC would bring the top of its conference into national championship games or into playoff games or in the BCS era into BCS bowls. They actually had a disadvantage in postseason play in having to play higher seeds in bowl games from other conferences. And the Big Ten actually had that issue as well, but not to the extent of the SEC, if you follow me.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes. So, for
Yeah.
example, back in the BCS days, every one of the conference's champions would go into a BCS bowl. Well, let's say the Big Ten, let's say the national championship game was Ohio State and LSU, like it was in 2007. Well, that means that would slot up all the Big Ten and SEC teams, one, because their team, they had a team make the national championship game, which was not a bowl game per se. And then the bowl games want SEC and Big Ten teams. So they would grab they would bypass at times a 11 and 1,
11 and
10 and 2 team in another conference to grab a team that was slightly behind, like a Penn State, a Michigan in the Big Ten, or in Alabama, or fill in the blank, LSU, Florida, whomever out of the SEC, and they would slot up. And then you would have only one team from the ACC or the Big 12 or the Pac 12 in a BCS game. And you would have the Big Ten with a team in the national championship game, and then two other teams, let's say in the Rose Bowl and in the Orange Bowl, and the SEC would have a team in the national championship game and a team in the Cotton Bowl and a team in the Sugar Bowl. And so their fourth place teams would be playing second place teams out of other conferences.
Yeah, but they were also in the BCS day. They were playing by the rankings. So if Nebraska or Oklahoma was number 2 or number 3, they were getting the big bowl games against the SEC and the Big Ten or whatever conference were. In fact, I don't think the Big Ten got much consideration for the big bowl games. They basically stuck to the Rose Bowl, but the SEC and the elite from the other conferences were always seemed to be in the big New Year's Six playoff games.
Okay, I'll say it this succinctly, Keith. If you go through the BCS era from 1998 through the end of it in 2013, more teams from the SEC played in the national championship game and in the BCS bowl games than the other conferences. And then the second would be the Big Ten. And then the other ones were far behind.
Yes. I'm just saying that the biggest bowl games were matched up in the top 5 teams that were ranked. They wanted to see those teams buck each other. Like Michigan in 97, Michigan went against Washington, who was the leader of the Pac-10, right? And Nebraska got Tennessee somehow.
What year are we talking about here?
97.
Okay, first of all, that was before the BCS.
Oh, you're
BCS
right. That
started
was
in 98.
That was the year before the BCS. Okay, I'm my bust, right.
So again, I could sit here and do the legwork. It wouldn't take that long to go through every year and add up the teams from the SEC and the Big Ten that played in the BCS games and the national championship games, and it would far outweigh the teams from the Big East, the Pac 10, 12, and the Big 12 and the
Sure,
ACC.
those were the years the SEC was dominating, absolutely. But like I say, from my standpoint, I wasn't tracking all the bowl games. I didn't track if Tennessee beat Clemson or Auburn or something. That it wouldn't be a matchup. They'd match with a different conference. Or Tennessee beat Wisconsin. I didn't track those bowl games as closely, I guess, as you did. So I only saw at the top, and I thought the SEC was getting the credit at the top. But you're telling me they were getting the credit all the way through.
The SEC had the best non-conference record in college football in bowl games and in regular season games from about 2005 up until a couple years ago.
Yeah, okay.
I will give you, Keith, I will be prepared. The next time you call, what do you want me to tell you? I will tell you the record between, let's say, the SEC and the Big Ten from the start of the BCS era until now in bowl games, or the SEC's record in bowl games. I know at one point during about a 15 or 20-year stretch, the SEC won about 65% of its bowl games against the Big Ten.
Yeah, and the SEC and Bama especially, they took on some pretty good teams along the way. I remember Michigan played them one year at Jerry World, got our butts kicked by Bama. I remember we played, and this was before BCS, but we played Miami when they were really good in the non-conference schedule. And we actually had a good game with Miami, but they pulled it out in the end. So, but the SEC, especially Bama, was really good about playing power teams in the non-conference, and they were winning those games pretty handily.
And Keith, certainly to be fair, I want to be fair about this conversation because, first of all, I've taken a beating from people this particular season about being some kind of SEC homer. I grew up rooting for every Big Ten team to win its bowl games. And truth be known, I shouldn't say this because I try to take on a stance of neutrality as much as possible. I root for every Big Ten team to win its bowl games now. I want the Big Ten to win every bowl game. But the SEC was the best conference. Now, prior to about 2005, it was a great debate. The Big 12 was even very, very good when Texas was on its game, and Oklahoma, of course, Kansas State was strong, and the Big 10 was really strong. It was a close competition with the SEC probably being the best. And then when Florida beat Ohio State upside the head, just brutally beat them bad in the 2006 BCS championship game. Now, that shouldn't have been blown out of proportion, but I think by the national media, they did blow it out of proportion. But the SEC did go on a run of, number one, winning national championships, number two, being the most dominant conference in terms of regular season big matchups and also postseason matchups and BCS bowls, etc. But I do specifically, Keith, remember that Ohio State getting crushed by Florida in the BCS championship game and just hearing for the next 3 days the talking heads. And at that time, obviously, the internet was not as prolific as it is now. Not everyone was carrying an internet in their phone. That, you were watching ESPN to gain most of your information. All they did is rail on the Big Ten for being this horrendous conference for a week after that. And I'm sitting there thinking, yes, Ohio State didn't show up. Yes, they were not the best team in the country. They got whipped by Florida. However, Penn State just beat Tennessee and Wisconsin just beat Arkansas in a bowl game on New Year's Day. Why does that not get brought up? So, yes, the SEC was the best, but was it the best at to the degree that it was being touted? No, it was not. It was blown out of proportion.
Sure. Well, that was the SEC. Did the SEC have the ESPN contract back then still?
Yes.
Yeah, so they were selling their own product.
I'm sorry. So did the Big Ten, though. Like the SEC, the Big time. What's that?
The Big Ten didn't have Fox at that time?
Fox and the Big Ten did not get together until 2017. That's a pretty recent situation there. Yeah, so basically the Big Ten was just as important to ESPN as the SEC was.
Yeah, well, maybe they were hoping to get the SEC exclusive contract or whatever.
Sure, maybe.
But yeah, because today you see Joel Klatt spewing the superiority of the Big Ten and how the SEC is a has-been conference now. But he's just selling the product, his own product.
Yeah, and what was very odd, now that you bring it up about Fox, is that Fox got into the college football game in 2006. They got into the college football business in 2006. But what was very odd, and I didn't like it at the time, for as good as they are at broadcasting college football now, they didn't do regular season college football for about, I don't know how many years. Starting with the 2006 season, if you recall, ABC did the national championship game in 2005, the Texas USC game. In 2006, Fox did the Florida-Ohio State national championship game. And they did all the BCS bowl games, but they did not do any other college football. So we're watching college football exclusively on ABC and ESPN the entire season. Then all of a sudden, Fox shows up to do bowl games and the championship game. And it's like, they haven't been in the business of college football the whole season. It was just odd, and it went that way for about 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, and did they have a couple of no names doing the broadcast? People we never heard of before.
I remember, I cannot think of his last name. He played in the NFL. Charles Davis. He does NFL games now. He was their number one analyst.
Yeah.
And baseball fans would know who this guy is.
I
He
should
did
say
Cincinnati
I
Reds
should say
games.
little known names. Yeah, not no known, but little known.
I can't think of his name. Tom Brenneman.
I think that's it. I think it's Tom Brenneman. Yeah.
That he was the Fox National Championship game
Yeah.
announcer.
I know. I thought that was weird. It's just they couldn't have found somebody better, somebody that everybody knows. Yeah.
And for somebody who was in the TV business for 30 years, I know that you're not good at something, regardless of how much money you pour into it. You can't be good at something when you're not doing it over and over and over and over.
Sure.
And so they just weren't as good as ESPN broadcasting games, because that's all ESPN did all weekend, the entire season. And then they show up and they kind of applied their NFL broadcasts to college football, and it was not as good as it should have been.
Yeah. And about the SEC dominance, for a while there, they said the national championship leads through the SEC because they were in like 10 or maybe 12 or 15 straight championship games. Do you remember that run?
That the SEC was in the championship game?
Yeah. And then
let's see. 06 through, I'm trying to think if the SEC would have missed any games. 06 through 22. Your Michigan team beat Washington, obviously, so an SEC team didn't make it that year.
Right.
Yeah, they would have made all the other ones. Yes.
06 through 22, that's
17 seasons.
17 seasons. Yeah, I think I remember that number. Yeah, that sounds familiar. 16 or 17, yeah.
And the SEC also, I don't know how much stock you put in this, but I think it's valid. I don't think it's valid in regards to the results on the field, but it gives indication to the talent in the league that until a year or two ago, the SEC had both the most first-round picks in the NFL draft and the most players taken in the NFL draft every year for 18 or 19 straight years.
Yeah. I see DeRio saying SEC is still the best. That's a surprise.
And believe it or not, I do believe that he still has some legitimate claims to say that.
I mean, it's disingenuous to say Virginia's a 7-1 team. Virginia was 7-5.
Well, what are we talking about?
Virginia, the Virginia football team that's the champion of the ACC.
You're talking about Duke. You
Duke. I'm sorry,
me there for a second, Keith. Yeah, Virginia went 11-3. Yes, Duke. Yes,
Duke. Yes, but no. Somebody said Virginia was 7, and you guys are saying Virginia was 7-1. I thought it was.
They were 7-1 in the conference. Yeah,
7-1 in the conference. And what was their overall record?
11-3 after they lost the ACC. They were 10-2. They lost the ACC championship game. Then they beat Missouri in a bowl game. They were 11-3.
11. They ended up in 11-3, but their final regular season record was 10-2.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that well, that's not as disingenuous. You're saying they're 7-1 in the ACC, but they were 10-2 overall.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I would say I wouldn't say the Big Ten is better now. I wouldn't say we're the best, but I'd say we're as good.
Well, that's very gracious of you, Keith, because I have no issue with any Big Ten fan saying we're the best conference. We won 2 straight national championships. We're on the cusp of winning a third. And even if we don't win it, the SEC's not winning it either. I have no issue with that. But when you grind down the numbers and the results, it's very close.
Yeah.
When you add up all the results of, Mississippi State and Rutgers, and you take everybody into account, that very much evens out the process.
Yeah. They won the non-conference schedule early in the season. We
Yes.
won the postseason
Yep.
at the end of the season. I mean, we're kind of equal now, it seems to me.
Yes. And that's how I'm going to treat it. I am going to spew out all the stats and go through the results and try to give it some kind of context and name a rankings lineup. But I do believe that you can go the way of every game's the same. If Rutgers played South Carolina, we're going to count that to be just as important as Indiana playing Georgia in a national championship game. I don't quite see it like that. I think that every game should be counted, but if the top of the league is stronger, that should carry a little bit more weight than
Sure, and even if it's
squabbling about Mississippi State and Northwestern.
Yeah, sure. But even if it's somebody like Penn State and Tennessee,
Sure.
that means more than Rutgers and Auburn.
Yeah.
Sure.
And to what degree? I don't know. I'm going to try to take it on and give it my best shot, but I have no airs about my way being the best way, and I know exactly how they should be ranked. I will just present it the best I can.
Oh, when I'll say in Ohio State's favor, when it's Ohio State against Georgia, it means the world.
Yeah, it's kind of silly to say, since you did bring up those two schools, that 2022 semifinal matchup between, you had Michigan, TCU, obviously, and then you had Ohio State, Georgia. That was just an epic game. And shoot, the Big Ten came that close to winning another national championship and starting the string a year earlier. Because if they would have kicked a field goal, I don't think anyone would have questioned Ohio State against TCU. But they would have had to win the game. I'm not saying that it could not have been competitive. But that Ohio State playing Georgia in a national semifinal 42-41 shouldn't carry more weight than Vanderbilt playing Illinois in week 2, for example. Yeah.
Yeah, where I'd say even during the regular season, if Georgia were ever to play Ohio State, that would be way bigger than Purdue against Kentucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would like to see, including myself, even though it kind of upsets my scheduling approach, just line the two conferences up, let's say in week 2, and have them just play top to bottom.
Yep. All right, good, Mark. It's always good to talk to you. Have a good rest of the show. Maybe you can get the reel back on and get somebody sensible.
We appreciate the call, Keith. Thanks.
All right. Talk to you.
Like to remind everyone that the Voice of College Football show here started out the Big Ten Live show. We're just going to kind of phase and transition into our late night show here at the Voice of College Football, brought to you by FanDuel. And once again, we will show you the odds according to FanDuel. 8.5 point spread opened 7.5. And the money's coming in on Indiana. I had somebody comment, and I think this was to the entire channel, so I think it was public, that they were a bit concerned that because they had put some type of preseason money on Indiana to win the national championship, but they were a bit concerned because the public was betting on Indiana, and usually the public is wrong. But all the money's coming in on Indiana, apparently. This is one of the few times that you can think of the favorite being the favored team by the public, because usually the public roots for the underdog. This is the historic underdog, Indiana, taking on the current underdog, Miami. All right, the real MVP stopping by.
Hello,
What's
Mark.
going
How
on,
are
sir?
you? Well, I know this might amaze some people because they think I'm completely biased, delusional, and all that stuff. And sorry about cutting out earlier, by the way. Mark
No
had
worries.
difficulties. I have no problem with what he said. If you want to say, hey, it's so close, I really can't determine who's better, the SEC, Big Ten, totally fine. Totally fine with that take. And that's a very reasonable take. What I've had issue with is people saying things that's not even close. The SEC's terrible. Joel Klatt, Keith brought up saying, well, the SEC's not a gauntlet. They shouldn't even had five, they shouldn't no way had 7 teams in there, not the 5 in there, all that stuff. People using postseason results to justify regular season rankings is asinine, ludicrous, and will damage the sport. By this logic, the Big 12 should never have a playoff team ever again. Is that healthy for the sport?
No, I don't believe it's healthy for the sport, and I don't like to select or revisit history based on what happened in the playoff. We can't do that because the playoff teams were selected based on obviously the results at the time, and I have no issue with Alabama being selected for the playoff, and I believe that the SEC earned all of those spots.
Yeah, I've had people, it's just a narrative now that Oklahoma didn't belong in the college football playoff. That's asinine. I mean, if Oklahoma didn't belong in the playoff, basically what you're saying is difficult schedules don't matter for the sport. And that's a really dangerous route to go down. But anyway, I got something else I want to argue with Keith about, and that's this whole SEC has looked horrible in the playoffs. Where's this horrendous loss that the SEC has had in the playoffs that's just like the conference is non-competitive? Texas A&M Ole Miss lost to a team that's in the national championship game, closer than the second best team in the Big Ten, by a significant margin too, I might add. Alabama lost by 35 to Indiana. That's a horrible loss. They're the third best team in the SEC, in my opinion. Next week, Indiana plays the third best team in the Big Ten, loses by 34. Maybe Indiana's just that much better than everyone else. Has that come across people's head? So again, I would like to know, where's this horrific loss for the SEC that just justifies them basically being shadow banned from the college football playoff going forward?
Well, so this may be in the category of both can be true. Alabama losing by 5 touchdowns in a college football playoff game to anyone is still a horrendous loss. But to your point, it was then backed up by Oregon going out and losing by the same significant number of points to show that whether they're the second, third, fourth best team in the Big Ten, second or third, most likely second or third best team in the Big Ten, that they are just as separated from Indiana's status as Alabama.
Absolutely.
But that's still a bad loss for the SEC.
It is. But you have to compare. And when you're making a comparison, the third best team in the Big Ten loses by 34 to the number 1 team. The third best team in the SEC loses by 35 to the number 1 team in the country. I mean, that would be like me coming on here and arguing Mount Mark. The third best team in the Big Ten should never get a playoff spot again. They've proven they can't compete against the number 1 team. All they do is get blown out. That'd be stupid and asinine. The problem is there isn't enough elite teams in college football to justify 12 teams even being in the college football playoff. That's the problem. It doesn't matter which conference you're talking about, or this whole conference thing it doesn't matter. The 9th best team in college football has a massive disadvantage against the number 1 team in college football almost every single year, because the disparity in results and talent and execution from number 1 to number 9 is cataclysmic. Almost every year we see the number 1 team blow out a top 10 team recently. I just don't understand, Mark. Maybe you can help me out, but why are people wanting to even, to me, it's all about the teams at the bottom of the top 10 not even being competitive with the top 10. Am I missing something?
I simply think it's a matter of most people believing something because either they just have always believed that, or that's their rooting interest, and then they go out and look for evidence to support their belief or their stance, and not the other way around, where you just review the results and the metrics and the play on the field and then come to a determination of what that means.
So basically, what you're telling me is we're completely screwed, and we're not able to use critical thinking to decide.
Many of us, yes.
That's great. There's no nuance perspective to have taken a hold, because I'm able to look out nuance and say, hey, listen, the SEC is not as dominant as they once were. They don't have clearly the best teams in college football anymore, but I value the depth of the SEC. That's totally fine. I don't think people are able to handle that perspective. And it's all biased or rigged, or ESPN's got a contract somehow from 2006 to 2026. Maybe it's just that the SEC for 20 years had the greatest coach of all time, and he was able to get the best talent of all time. And that combined led to a dynasty in which the likes of we've never seen before. And that led to the SEC getting a ton of national championships. And the SEC now doesn't have that guy. Maybe that's the reason the SEC isn't good, because their best team by a wide margin is now kind of your above average SEC team, where Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana now, one of them has merged to the top, are just natural top 3 powerhouses or top 5 powerhouses every single year. Whereas the SEC doesn't have that, and probably won't have that going forward. Like, if you ask me who's going to win more national championships over the next 10 years, it's the Big Ten without a doubt. But is the only thing that matters is not winning a national championship. If that's the case, we can't play the games. Most of the games are meaningless. Most of the teams we root for have no chance to do. Like, if the only thing you care about is winning a national championship, why do Virginia Tech fans exist? Why do Arkansas fans exist? They're never going to win anything. I don't understand why people even look at the sport as the national championship's the only thing that matters. You're an Ohio State fan, so can you explain it to me?
Well, I would agree with you that I enjoy the sport top to bottom, and I think all the games are relevant, and I enjoy the sport, and I feel for the Purdue fan, the Virginia Tech fan, the South Carolina fan, because they're not going to win national championships. Although, look at this Indiana example, but you got to come up with the one guy, every generation that can do that, I guess, that can pull something like that off. But yeah, for me, college football is way beyond. First of all, we've gone through the large portion of the history of college football without really having a legit championship system. So up until at least 1998, and I would argue up until 2014, the national champion was that. All that told us most years was that team was one of the best teams. We know they were one of the 2 best, 3 best, 4 best, 5 best, but we just had to select somebody, and they were the team that either pragmatically was the best team, or they won the right game at the right time, and they were one of the best. Like, I'm not discounting almost any national champion as being one of the best teams, that they didn't deserve the national championship, but typically there were about 3 or 4 other teams that did as well. So we finally have arrived at a place in the sport where games are played to determine a champion that earned that position. So for much of the history of the sport, you better not have thought too much or put too much stock in a national championship, because it was a lot of politics and a lot of just fortune of playing the right team at the right time, or being selected in the right bowl game so you could win a national championship.
Yeah, the much bigger threat on the horizon than who's better between the SEC Big Ten is, why on earth is the Big Ten trying to make it to where Pittsburgh makes the college football playoff? I mean, that's just stupid. Pittsburgh, Mark, under the Big Ten's 24 automatic qualifier model, would have made the college football playoff this year. I mean, if that happens, the sport's dead. The sport I love is basically gone. Does that matter?
Well, the people that are in charge are supposed to be smarter than both of us. I tend to agree with you. Yes, if you're going to throw a college football game on between Pitt and Illinois, yeah, I'll watch that football game just because that's what I do. But is that a type matchup that will be determining a championship, and any playoff system should ride on the cusp of everyone that enters that. And there can be an exception once in a while, but generally everybody that enters that tournament should be a legitimate contender to win the championship. And that will no longer be the case. And it really is not the case now, but it will be expanded beyond belief to a ridiculous degree that we'll be watching a lot of marginal football teams that we know are going to get slaughtered the next time they step out onto the field. But if you like watching football, then you're going to watch 8-4 play 8-4 in a first round college football playoff game. I don't like it. I don't believe in it. And I don't know if this is the Big Ten simply believing that this is the way to make the most money, and that's end of decision. Like they hit the boardroom, and Tony Petitti had requested the accountants to go and figure out, if we expand to 24, how much more money are we going to make? And they threw down, some figure of $150 million or something per season. And then Tony Petitti said, good, done. We got to go to 24 teams. Or there was any other thought given to this, because I don't know what that argument would have been other than money to promote a 24 team field. I have no idea what the argument is for that.
There are some people who, like the Big Ten, man, Mark, from what I've heard, is they just take the Big Ten's narrative about the SEC and apply it also to the Big Ten and think it's all rigged, it's all biased, it's all their teams don't get a chance to prove anything. The preseason rankings hurt them more than the Big Ten SEC. And this goes all the way from Big Ten man at the top, all the way down to G5 man at the bottom. It's just, the slippery slope argument, Mark.
Of course.
Just apply that. The Big Ten's at the top of the water slide. The G5's at the bottom of the water slide. They're using the exact same arguments, just in different levels of extremity. That's all they're doing. It's all rigged. The contracts are against us. The committee doesn't like us because our brands aren't as big. The preseason rankings are against us. It's the exact same arguments. How about you win your football games on the field? Big Ten man, if you want more playoff teams, beat the SEC on the football field. Same thing for Big 12 man, ACC man, G6 man. Why isn't next year Texas Tech's best team they play in non-conference game is against Oregon State? How's that valid to the sport? As an example, they could go 13-0, and I hope the committee punishes them by not giving them a top 4 seed. I don't care they're 13-0. They're not a good football team. Why? Because they play scrubs. How do I know that? Because the results on the field next year will most likely show that the Big 12 can't compete against the SEC or Big 10 because they lose all the games. And it's not the best teams lose to other best teams. It's the bottom of leagues will beat the top teams in their conference. Is any of this making any sense, or am I crazy, Mark?
I am here for most of it, DeReal. Definitely. Yeah, 24 teams in a playoff is just utter ridiculousness. I think it confuses people. I think that like most industries, they believe themselves to be bigger and better and believe themselves to be more important and be the center of people's universes. And most people that watch the college football playoff are not at the point that they can, recite every roster or even every quarterback in their conference or anything like that. And it's just going to be overkill, and it's going to be confusing to them to see, Pitt play Wisconsin in a playoff game when both teams are 8-4. And it just waters down the product, and it's not as special. And we could go on and on with the detriment to the sport outside of it's going to make more money.
No, oh, by the way, the Big Ten in their infinite wisdom this year, because of the automatic qualifiers and their way they're structured, Iowa would not have made the playoffs, Mark, but Pittsburgh would have, because of the automatic qualifiers. So a team that is objectively better than another team would have missed the playoffs. What is Big Ten man doing? What is their conference doing other than actively destroying the health of the sport?
Well, I got to think that they've run the models year to year to figure that this would benefit them.
Yeah, well, they need new models. Because let me explain this to Big Ten man and SEC man. Anytime you give an automatic qualifier to the Group of Six, the Big 12, or the ACC, that is most likely going to hurt the SEC first and the Big Ten second. Why? Because those conferences win more games than the other conferences. Does that make sense? Does that track logically?
That is the setup. That is the
Right.
setup. So it's constantly a tension between the deserving teams versus the best teams, or the deserving the playing participation trophy or entry into the playoff versus the best conferences. That's always going to be the tension. And there needs to be a little bit of both, or you don't have a sport, then you just cycle down to two conferences and those teams are the only ones that play.
I mean, we're basically going to head that road either way because the results are going to determine that. I can't make it to where Texas Tech actually beats somebody in non-conference play, but I would like a rule to at least mitigate this to where if you don't play one Power 4 opponent, you are ineligible for a top 4 seed. Because, like, Oregon beat Texas Tech by 23 points. Normally, I would consider, man, they beat the best team in the league. But with how bad the Big 12 is, I don't even know where to value that win. Because, like I was telling Matt Zimming and you, I think there's about 14 teams right now that are better than Texas Tech. Now, I can't prove that, or I have no real, like, evidence other than results.
You have the evidence of one game.
Right. And then I have the results of other games at the top. Like, Texas went to Ohio State, and Texas only lost by 7.
Yeah. And Oregon only beat Iowa on the last play of the game. They didn't beat them by 23 points. Yeah.
Right. So I have results like that to back up the claim that Texas Tech is not as good as they are. But where do we fit that result into this whole conference discussion, or this whole discussion as well? Because I just think the Big 12 is just that bad.
Well, again, this was one season, and last year the Big 12 only got one shot. So we have to be balanced here, that if we're going to pile in the Big 12 for being that god-awful once in its one opportunity against Oregon this year, that it was that good in its one opportunity against Texas when Arizona State took them to overtime.
I mean, that's fair, but let's take Oklahoma out of this thing because they're the majority of the Big 12 loss. They're still 1-3 in the last decade. Cincinnati, TCU, Arizona State, and then Texas Tech being the most recent team. They're 1-3. Their point differential is got to be like minus 100 or something because TCU lost by 1 billion to Georgia. And the point that I'm making with this whole rant is the Big 12 eventually is not going to get any teams in the playoffs. And this whole you are what your record says you are argument has to die immediately. Because if not, it's just going to make it to where nobody's going to play anybody. We're going to be more unsure about this thing. And something I didn't mention in the Heather Dinich article was conferences were upset that the record, the strength metrics that they were using this season compared to previous seasons that we thought was going to make a big deal and why I thought 3 losses.
Yes.
They were upset. It felt like those metrics weren't weighted at all throughout the entire process. So.
Well, no, they came to the same conclusion as they would otherwise.
Correct.
The best records were going to make the field. Yeah.
Correct. We have to get away from this best record thing. That's what's destroying.
Unless we can somehow do something about the schedules, and the only way we can truly do something about the schedules is obviously completely tear up these leagues and make them balanced. But then we've completely ripped up the sport if we do that.
Right. That's impossible to do because 2 leagues are so much better than the other leagues. It's like do you watch any college baseball, Mark? Or you covered it back in the day?
Yes, I did.
So I'm sure in the 90s, I'm sure in like today, the SEC is just so
Yes.
much better than everyone else. It's not even a joke. Was it that way in the 90s?
Yes, it was. I went to a college where I covered a College World Series where 4 of the 8 teams were from the SEC West.
That's crazy. One division, not even one conference, one division.
Yeah. Yep.
But that's the way we're going in college football if we don't do something about this. You are what your record says you are. We're going to the other extreme where 8-4, 9-3, 7-5 teams will make it. Because in college baseball, you'll have a team that's just above 500. Like 2 years ago, Mark, there's a rule in college baseball to where you have to finish your season above 500 to make the tournament. Florida was 1 game under 500, but because they won their last 2 games, they were a lock to the NCAA tournament. That's how overpowered the SEC is in college baseball. Is that those last 2 games they won and easily made the tournament as like a super high seed, a 2 seed, I think it was, just passing everyone. But if they lost one of their last 2 games, they wouldn't have even made the tournament.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and that's the direction college football is going to head down to if we don't do something about this.
So it sounds like you're proposing, or the only answer to this that I can think of as a proposal, because the leagues are going to stay either the same or we're going to have continued expansion and we're going to have the SEC and the Big Ten power up even more. And the Big Ten or the Big 12 and the ACC are just going to become more mediocre by getting picked apart or having to scrounge and grab teams just to fill spots like they did in their most previous expansion. So for Texas Tech, let's say Texas Tech is just as dominant next season in the Big 12 as they were this year. And if they had an opportunity to reschedule their non-conference schedule, basically anybody who's going to contend out of the Big 12 in particular would have to schedule a top team from one of the other conferences to prove that their run through their conference, their 9-0 run through the Big 12 is legitimate.
Yes. And this is what's happening in college baseball, or it's happened in college baseball. You look at the Big 10, the Big 12, they'll play a team from the other 2 conferences, the ACC or SEC. And if they just win a series, they're like, oh, they're a legitimate team. They went in February to this baseball stadium, like the 14th best team in this other conference, and they won a series. Therefore, they're a legitimate team. That's what the Big 12 and ACC has to do going forward. And if they don't do that, then I'm not going to take them as legitimate. I don't think anyone should take them as legitimate. Or the other thing, Mark, you could do, and I think is the path of least resistance, and it's easy, is you just expand the college football playoff from 24 to 28 or 32 teams.
Yeah. For as much as I love to watch football, that would illegitimize the playoff to an. I don't know that it would illegitimize the playoff because the best teams would still advance and win. It would just make for ridiculously absurd, meaningless games played in the first round.
Well, it's just not the first round as well. It's the second and third round because it has a cascading effect. Like, look at the gap between Alabama and Indiana. That gap would only be shown in the third round of a 32-team tournament. And it may sound crazy, but I did see one report, like in August, they quietly went under the radar, Mark, where the Big Ten, instead of 24, they looked at a 28-team model. So the 24 is not even the stopping point, Mark. We're going to go to 32. I've said it for years now. We're going to 32, and we're going to have 7-5 teams make this sucker.
All right. Well, we'll be here for it.
Yeah, I know.
All right, DeReal.
Anyway, it's a pleasure talking to you as always. Thanks for having me on. Make sure to hit the like button. Have a great rest of your day.
Appreciate it, man. DeReal MVP. And your calls forthcoming. The link is in the chat. Evil Badger 72 says, DeReal MVP, Mr. Doom and Gloom. probably commenting specifically about him just basically not seeing an end to this and seeing the deterioration of the sport. I would agree, though. I do think that there should be something special about postseason play in any sport. And we have lost that across the board. All the playoffs have expanded in the professional ranks, and I don't think they're as good as they once were. But the thing that professional sports has going for it is that the talent distribution is so equal that they can expand the playoffs and still have legitimate games and legitimate competition. All right. SEC Dog is telling us SEC still dominates viewership. No one watches CBS 3:30 game anymore. I didn't even hear Gary Danielson all year until the Army-Navy game. Some of that's true. Some of it's not true. I'm not going to necessarily base my evaluation of the CBS 3:30 games based on you not watching the games. You're an SEC fan. Of course you didn't watch the games. They had some clunkers. They had some great games. They had Iowa and Oregon play a great game with a ton of people watching. They had other matchups at 3:30 that made sense. But when the schedule breaks a certain way, yes, the Big Ten did not have enough quality inventory every week to fill all those, what I'll say, prime time slots, not prime time during the day, but prime matchup slots, premier slots, meaning the Fox noon slot, the CBS 3:30, the NBC 7:30 slot. Sometimes the Big Ten would come up short and you would get a clunker that would usually get pushed to that 3:30 spot on CBS, depending on the week. Which reminds me, we will do a TV ratings breakdown on college football like no other. I do not see anybody else breaking down the TV ratings like we do here each and every offseason at the Voice of College Football. We'll do a complete series, every conference, the biggest matchups, the best games, then we'll put it all together to shake out the TV ratings. Coaches rankings, program rankings, team rankings. I separate the team rankings from the program rankings to not confuse anyone. So as soon as the season is over, I will release my not top 25 that actually makes sense, but my top 1 through 136 that actually makes sense the day after the national championship game. And then weeks from now, months from now, we'll release our program rankings. Those are different than the 2025 team rankings, coaches rankings, conference rankings. And then, as SEC Dog alludes to right there, we will break down the TV ratings as well. Yes, Jim says here that the Big Ten wins playoff games. And we now have 3 seasons of playoff games. And the Big Ten is what? Michigan went 2-0. Ohio State went 4-0. That's 6-0. Indiana lost. That's 6-1. Who else made the playoff from the Big Ten last year? Penn State went. So, okay. Ohio State beat Oregon. So throw that one out. So 6-1 becomes 5-1. Penn State 1-2, lost 1, 7-2. And then this year, Ohio State lost 7-3. Indiana beat Alabama. That's 8-3. Oregon won. That's 9-3. And again, we throw out the competition against each other. So unless I screwed up somewhere, the Big Ten is 9-3 in 2023, 4-5. The SEC, Alabama lost to Michigan in 23. In 24, Tennessee lost. Georgia lost. Texas won. Then they lost. That's 1-4. And then this year, Ole Miss won. That's 2-4. Alabama lost, that's 2-5. Ole Miss lost, that's 2-6. So if I just added that up correctly, throwing out games against each other, last year's Rose Bowl, Ohio State, Oregon, this year, Indiana, Oregon, etc. The Big Ten's 9-3, and the SEC is 2-6 in postseason playoff games. So, point well taken there by Jim. I certainly believe that that is now a substantial amount of games to make that claim. We're not talking about, oh, we're 3-0 and you're 1-2. 9-3, 2-6. Yes, at the top, the Big Ten has been better for these 3 seasons. And we started to see that the season before when Ohio State and Georgia played neck and neck. All right, folks, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We're showing up on Wednesday at various times. 11 a.m. Eastern Time is the Buckeyes live show with myself and Tony Gerdeman and Steve Hellwagon from 247 Sports and Buckeye Huddle. Then we've got the Miami show featuring myself, and we've got Alec Keyser guesting from the Indiana channel. Cam Underwood, State of the U, and myself on the Miami show, Miami Live at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And then we'll be back here for the college football show late night on Wednesday. Enjoy your night, and we will see you for the Buckeyes live show at 11 a.m. Eastern.